It's been a minute, so let's do a Wednesday mailbag where I answer your questions about the Dallas Stars and plenty more next on Locked On Stars.
Your Locked On Stars, your daily podcast on the Dallas Stars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Howdy, Stars fans. I'm Joey Erickson, former producer of 105 Through the Fan. Please be sure to subscribe. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. And as always, thank you so much for making us a part of your day and making us your first listen. Today's burning question: should Jere Lehtinen be in the Hockey Hall of Fame? His resume speaks for itself, so I will make the case on why he should be in the Hockey Hall of Fame today, and I'll answer plenty more of your questions on today's episode, which is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Thank you so much for sending in your questions once again. I'll do this every few weeks or so. You can send in your questions via the YouTube community tab. I'll ask for them and you can put them there. I'll give you a shout out as well, and I'll get to as many as possible on a mailbag episode. So let's jump right in. And this came from Greg not too long ago. Should Jere Lehtinen be in the Hall of Fame? And I thought, what a fantastic question. First off, I love Jere Lehtinen. He was my favorite player growing up. I modeled my game after his, and maybe that's why I didn't make it as far as I wanted to. But nonetheless, what a fantastic career he had with the Dallas Stars that spanned 14 years. And his resume obviously is very stacked. It stacks up in a lot of ways, and there are parts of it that don't. So I'll share a little bit of everything, and this could last 10 minutes. It really could, because he was a fantastic player. Let's start off with the positives, okay? He has a Stanley Cup championship. In 1999, he won the Stanley Cup with the Dallas Stars. He's also a three-time Selke winner. He won 9 medals representing Finland in international competitions, has plenty of Olympic medals, also won a couple of championship trophies in La Liga over in Finland as well. So he's pretty much won everywhere he's gone. And you can go to his elite prospects profile and boom, the medals are there. 1-time world championship gold medal, 3-time world championship silver medal. He's got some bronze. He's in the Finnish Hockey Hall of Fame. He's also in the International Hockey Hall of Fame. He was inducted in 2018. So he has gotten some recognition from other Hall of Fames. So he's won at very high levels. He's won individual awards. So his resume certainly stacks up there. He's one of 5 players that has won the Selke Trophy 3 times in his career. And for those of you that don't know, Selke is given to the best two-way player in the game. Usually goes to a forward. Of course, Patrice Bergeron won it almost every year, it felt like. And I think he can make the case that it should be renamed the Bergeron Award down the line. But he's one of 5 players that have won the Selke Trophy 3 or more times. Bob Gainey's in that conversation. Guy Carbonneau, Pavel Datsyuk, and Patrice Bergeron. So he's a part of some pretty elite company when it comes to winning individual awards. Plus, he won a Stanley Cup, as I mentioned, in 1999. He's also finished top 3 in Selke voting in 3 other years. So he was perennially a Selke Trophy candidate. And that's where his resume really stacks up and where I will make the case on why he should be in the Hockey Hall of Fame, not only for what he did in the NHL in 14 years with the Dallas Stars, but the overall growth of the game for what he did in Finland. He lost the gold medal to Sweden in 2006, I believe, in the Winter Olympics, which kept him out of some very rarefied company, being part of the Triple Gold Club. But he has not only impacted the game in the National Hockey League, but overall the international game. And I think you have to give him a lot of credit for the presence of Finnish hockey players in today's game. And Jere Lehtinen continues to be a strong figure with the Finnish national team, the world championship teams, the under 18s, and continues to do a great job. So I think when you step back and look at his impact on the game, not necessarily what he did on the ice, but even off the ice, he has grown the game and improved it, which I think you should take into account when you're talking about players and general managers, front office people, builders, as they call them, to get into the Hockey Hall of Fame. So his resume really stacks up when it comes to individual awards. He has a championship. That's something that goes against Joe Pavelski, right? He doesn't have a Stanley Cup. He doesn't have individual awards as well. Where his resume can kind of have holes poked through it is his offensive numbers. His overall statistical numbers do not match up. 514 points, 243 goals, and 271 assists. But I think you can almost spin that in a way that's positive, because his job, his main role, was to shut down the other opponent because he was so good defensively. That was his job. He sacrificed some of his scoring in order to shut down the opposition, where some of his numbers may have suffered because of that. And that's where I think you have to take his statistics with a bit of grain of salt, because his job was not to go out there and score 30 plus goals a year. Although he did that a couple of times. He scored 31 in 02-03. He won the Selke that year. And then in 05-06, he had 33 goals and 52 points. So his overall numbers don't hold up among the best ever, obviously, but he still put up some decent numbers while shutting down the opponents. His main job was to prevent scoring. And I think you have to share some of that love, or at least acknowledge that he was one of those guys. He shut down the best offensive players in the game. It's amazing too. You look at plus minus, and I know that's not a number that people fall in love with anymore, but a plus 176, 39 plus minus, plus 39 in 02-03. You don't see that too often, and that's with 31 goals. It's mildly impressive. And he was such a good player, high motor, a fantastic two-way forward for an entire decade within the National Hockey League. So I think he has a very, very good shot and a very good case to be in the Hockey Hall of Fame. We'll see. We'll definitely see. But yeah, he has certainly had his fair share of recognition with other leagues, as I mentioned, the IHF, and of course the Finnish Hockey Hall of Fame, which is no surprise there. So there you go. You share your answer with me after I gave you some of that information. I think a lot of us as Stars fans can make the case he should be in the Hockey Hall of Fame. What a player he was, and he was a big part of bringing home that Stanley Cup championship in 1999. All righty, let's segue into some more questions. Fantastic question, Greg. Thank you so much for that one. That filled up some time, because it's a great question, and he has a ton of wonderful achievements. So figured if not only for him being in the Hall of Fame, it's good to at least talk to him and acknowledge how great of a player he was. We'll answer some more questions on the other side in just a moment. Today's episode of Locked On Stars is brought to you by Indeed. We're driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Moving on with our Wednesday mailbag episode here on Locked On Stars. If you love Locked On Stars so much, and thank you so much for making it your first listen of the day, go ahead and make your second listen the Locked On NHL podcast. They do fantastic stuff over there, providing you with a national perspective on all things NHL each and every day. So share them some love over at Locked On NHL as well. Please hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, drop a like, drop a comment as well on today's episode. Thank you to all you wonderful listeners. I love doing these so I can engage with you a little bit more. This community has been so fantastic. This next question from Mike: does Jamie Benn have a future with the Stars beyond this season? So I've talked about this a lot, I feel like, over the summer, because his contract, of course, comes up at the end of the year. My main blanket statement on this question would be, I think he does have a future with the Dallas Stars. And I spitballed this with Ryan Chambers last week on an episode of Locked On Stars. I encourage you to go back and listen to that as well. Ryan is 100% sure he's coming back. And the more he talks about it, the more I sort of feel the same way. I do believe Jamie could get more money on the open market or from another team at the end of next season. But I also believe he wants to stay in Dallas. He wants to try to win a championship in Dallas. And he will take a hefty pay cut in order to stay in Dallas. Now, the question is, where does the number and where does the years sort of match up? Because if I'm Dallas, the most I'm comfortable with is maybe 3 years. I'm thinking a sweet spot is 2 years at $4 to $5.5 million. Maybe closer to 4 if we're being completely honest, because they have to get Johnston done. They have to get Stankoven done. They're going to have to get Bork done at some point. And getting $9.5 million off the books is going to allow the Stars to do a whole lot in terms of making this roster better. And frankly, starting to surround this roster around the new core, which is Wyatt Johnston and Rope and Robertson and Stankoven. It's not Sagan and Ben anymore that you're trying to build around. So if Jamie's willing to take a hefty pay cut, which he understands he's going to have to, then I'm all for it. I think he does have a future here in Dallas. But I also acknowledge I think he can get quite a bit of money somewhere else. And I've also thrown these examples in there multiple times. Stamkos left, although some of that was not because of him. Tampa Bay signed some others after they won a few cups to some really good deals like Point. Cicerelli was in there as well, which made it a lot harder for them to re-sign Stamkos. Joe Pavelski is a great example as well. And the former GM of San Jose came out a couple of days ago, I saw, and sort of regretted not keeping Joe Pavelski in San Jose and letting him walk to eventually come to the Dallas Stars. So, I think it is a good question, but I would say I'm like 80 to 20%. I would say I'm about 80% 20 that he's going to stay with Dallas. I think he does have a future here. And I will say, I think he can age really well. He hasn't had as many threatening injuries as someone like Tyler Sagan. And let's face it, he's been very productive the last couple of seasons. 78 points a couple of years ago. He had 60 this past season. If you keep him with Johnston, I mean, I think you're looking at a 55 to 75-point player for the next couple of years. I don't really worry about his lack of production, especially with the talent he's going to have around him. It's just, where does it make sense for the organization and himself where it's like, okay, this makes sense to bring you back, because we can't give you what Stamkos got in Nashville, obviously. And Stamkos is a different player, but albeit he's had threatening injuries, he has had a remarkable career, even with some of those really, really scary injuries he's had in his season. And boy, Nashville broke the bank from him. So good for him. I don't think he'll get that much, but he could definitely find something. Okay. Let's move on to, this comes from Craig from Vancouver, fantastic listener of the show. He says, I watch all the episodes. Thank you so much, Craig. Shout out to all you wonderful Canadians out there having a wonderful, wonderful Summer Olympics, by the way. Summer McIntosh, woo, she can fly. She can fly in the pool. Anyways, hindsight is always 2020, but do you wish management had signed Robo to an 8-year extension, or are you content with a 4-year compromise they agreed to? Yeah, I would say I'm content with it, but they may have missed an opportunity, especially at 7.75 to lock him up for 8 years. But albeit there are some questions about Robertson, and I think there still is. He hasn't necessarily shown up and been that guy in the Stanley Cup playoffs yet. He's had some moments. He's had some moments. That hat trick against Edmonton in Game 3, I believe, in the Western Conference Final. But outside of that, he was pretty quiet that entire series. And he did not have an excellent postseason the year before. And he's continuing to find his game. He's a much more all-around player now than he was a few years ago. I will acknowledge that. He continues to refine his game. He's a better defensive player than he probably gets credit for. But man, we need him to score some goals. And I think at the time, coming off a 79-point season, I know he had 40 goals. Man, if you could have locked him up for 8 years, that would have been fantastic. That would have put him at 29-30, I believe, is when his contract would expire. And that would have been along with Rope. And that's when context comes into play, right? Because Rope had to get done the next year, and you knew you were going to pay him after his bridge deal. So, I think yes and no to some degree. And obviously at 109 points. So if you locked him up for 8 years, I'm like, wow, this was phenomenal. So I would say I'm pretty content with it now, especially because you have Stankoven and you have Johnston. And I know I mention them all the time, but those are some important contracts they have coming up with Bork at 25-26, Johnston here and 25-26. Like, these are big deals they have to work around. So I think in the long run for Jason, it may work out to his benefit that when he comes due for his next contract in 26-27, Johnston should be paid. Stankoven should be paid. They're going to have their core sort of set, and then Robertson can sort of find where he fits. So it's an interesting question. I'll say. I think you would have loved to lock him up. I'm pretty content with it, though, because there still are some questions about his game, especially in the postseason. And he has gotten better, which is a good sign. He continues to evolve. But when is he going to be like that guy, right? Because White Johnston looks like that guy. At 21, I said this ad nauseum last season, especially in the last 3 months. He just looks like the best player on the ice almost every time, except against McDavid, because no one else is better than Connor McDavid. And I don't know if you haven't really seen that out of him consistently in the postseason, which is where I sort of measure Robertson now. He can score and he had a bit of down year last year. I think his number will be just fine. He'll probably pop back up to 40. But what can he give me in the postseason? I'm not trying to take anything away from his playoffs. They were really good. He was almost a point per game, okay? He was almost a point per game. So I don't want to be the negative Nelly here when it comes to Robertson, because he's obviously a fantastic player and he's going to be an integral part of Dallas for numerous years. So there. That's where I stand on Mr. Robo. And he's got a fantastic number, 21. Cannot go wrong with that. Alrighty, let's answer a few more of your questions, and then we'll wrap up the episode in just a moment. Today's episode of Locked On Stars is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is the authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. It takes 30 seconds to download on your smartphone. It's free. It's available on the App Store, on Google Play. You can get last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seats, and their lowest price guaranteed. You want to go to a Texas Rangers game here recently? They're trying to pull through. It doesn't look like they're going to have that magic, but you never know. Plenty of games remain. Go ahead and get your tickets on Game Time. You see the view from your seat, so you know exactly what you're getting to when you get to Globe Life, and you can save up to 60% off buying last minute. Not only with Texas Ranger games, but concerts, comedy, theater, you name it, they have it. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Okay, some more of your listener questions here on a Wednesday mailbag episode. Once again, thank you so much for sending these in. Love doing these. A lot of fun. Some of you are always thinking about different things than I am. So it inspires me and it expires some segments, like Greg's question earlier about Jere Lehtinen. So I really, really appreciate it. This comes from Christian. Who do you think will be the Stars' best forward next year? Man, there's about 5. I feel like at any point next season could be the Stars' best forward. Robertson, number 1. Johnston, Rope. You have to put Rope in there. Duchesne looked really good for the first few months of last season. Can he sort of find his game again? And I think you can maybe throw Stankoven in there, or it could be Maverick Bourque. Look, I think it's going to be Wyatt Johnston. He feels like he's going to be a top 15 player in the NHL in a few seasons. I don't know if I'm wildly overrating him, but I just think he's that good. I love his game. He has a bit of that Patrice Bergeron feel, a little two-way. He's good on the dots. We know he can score. He's got a knack for scoring, and he scored some big goals. I just think the sky's the limit for him. And I don't know if we scratch the surface. That's why I think he's going to be the best forward. I don't think he's reached his peak. And that's what should be scary for the rest of the NHL. And I get it. Maybe a bit biased because I just watch him all the time. But I think he's going to be that good. 65 points, had a career high 32 goals. It feels like 40 is not that far out of the reach. When you look at a stretch he had last year, I don't think he scored in 16 games. If he pops in a few during that stretch, he's sniffing 40. I just, I have a hard time arguing anybody else. And of course, Robertson had 110 points, and he could do that again in an instant. We can't certainly discount that. But I think when you talk about the overall best forward in all 3 zones, I think Wyatt Johnston has to be put in that conversation. Power play, penalty kill. He should get increased power play time now without Joe. And he's really good. He's really good on the PK as well. So I'll throw that in there. We'll finish up with this one from Scott from Nashville. Thanks, Scott. What trade deadline move do you see the Stars making to get back to their post-Tanev form from last season? Fantastic question, number one. They're obviously going to have to go out and get another defender. It'll be interesting who is sort of on the trade block. You're going to have to factor in who's in the playoff conversation, who is not. A name that's been thrown around quite a bit recently is Rasmus Andersson from Calgary, and he's a really good player as well. A bit smaller. He's just 27 years of age. He's a good player. Really, really like him. A little more offensively inclined than Tanev. So you'd be getting a little more, not just a little more, a lot more. You'd be getting a different player. He is 6 foot, 215 pounds, not huge, but plays a really, really solid game. I mean, 39 points last season. He had 40. He got 50 a few years ago. So he's very capable of chipping in offensively. I think that's a name, especially with the way Calgary's just sort of been fire selling everyone. There are still a lot of other interesting names. Jeff Petrie could be in that conversation, but I feel like the Wings are going to be pushing for a postseason spot. I think you can throw a few of the Blues defensemen in there as well. I know I've spoken of them. Falk would be interesting at $4.75 million. Parayko, his salary is very steep, so it'd have to be some salary retainment there. I think Falk wouldn't be terrible. His best years are behind him, however, and he is 32. So do the Stars really want to bring that into the fold? I think those are some names to certainly look out for. This is almost a better question to almost answer in a few months, of course, and I'll certainly be all over it once the season starts to roll and we get an idea of where some teams are going to be, and we get an idea of some more players that could possibly be looking for a new spot. But those are just a few off the top of my head to at least keep an eye on for next season. And hopefully Dallas can get their decor back in order, like Tanev, so to speak, like you mentioned when they brought in Tanev. I will say, with a lot of the moves they made in free agency, and look, I know I've been very critical of many of the decisions by general manager Jim Nill, but look, you can't be too upset that they're just a move away from sort of solidifying themselves and possibly getting back to a Western Conference final. They're just a move away. It's frustrating when you come so close the past couple years and it feels like you took a step back, and I'll argue they probably did, but they're still a move away. And yeah, that makes it a little more fun. Who are they gonna get from the trade deadline? That would be a ton of fun. And I did an episode last year, I think in November, possibly it may have been December, about 3 names to keep an eye out for, and one of them was Tanev. And then boom, Tanev was a Dallas Star, and he fit like a glove, of course. And yeah, there's got to be another Tanev out there. Maybe not the same player, but someone that can jump right in and be an immediate impact for this Dallas Stars decor. So we'll see how it all shakes out. We'll see how it all plays out. Thank you so much for all your wonderful questions. Please be sure, send me in your questions via YouTube, the community tab. I'll do another one of these in a couple of weeks or so. So if you did not get your question in, please do it next time. I would love to answer them. And thank you so much for joining me today on today's episode of Locked On Stars. Hit that subscribe button. We're over 3,000 subscribers. Let's continue to grow. The numbers have been fantastic, by the way. You guys have been sticking around with me throughout the offseason. I know it's a bit dry right now. Not a ton of news, but it'll pick up. We're about a month away from training camp, and we'll be back in full swing. Have a great Wednesday, and we'll see you tomorrow. So long, Stars fans.